Has anyone else, Shivam, Darius, anyone else got any
I was
points?
gonna say let's
Or
put the Kalvin Phillips Declan Rice debate
yeah,
to
go
bed.
for it, bro. Go for it. Go
I
put it to
personally
bed.
think like the fact of the matter is Kalvin Phillips is a more complete centre defence mid than Rice, in the sense that uh, he's basically the backbone of our squad. Like, as you've seen, without Phillips, like
Mm,
we can't do. We still get results, and obviously it's the first season in the Premier League. But um, the difference between Phillips and Rice is if Rice goes missing or Rice is sitting on the bench, West Ham still doing all right. We're not, in the sense that we still have Patrick Bamford, who's like the third top goal scorer. We still have Rafinha. We still have a good midfield line. But when you lose your centre defence mid, when we're losing Phillips, it's just like erupting there, and it's shown like from like obviously we had Phillips from the academy days, and the whole way through like League One, Championship, wherever we've been. He's been like the best player, like in terms of passing, tackling. Even now, like if you look at the stats, if you compare the two, I was just looking at it now before whilst Abhinav was speaking, and he's won more aerial duels. He's got more tackles. The only thing that Declan Rice beats him is his like long passes or something like that, pass completion, but it's like a minorly like 2%. So I see a West Ham fan, especially like now, the perfect time to talk about it because we're playing West Ham on next
yeah.
Monday. But like West Ham fans on Twitter will say, "Oh, Declan Rice," but I'm not discrediting him. I think he's a good player. He's a good young player. He's an English player. It's always good to have good young English players. But and obviously he's been in the Premier League longer than Phillips and whatever. But the fact that Southgate called Phillips up straight from he hasn't even played a minute of Premier League football, um, put him in the England squad. Obviously people say Southgate is um, might not make the best decisions, but the fact someone saw something in Phillips, and like even like you were telling me, Darmish, like when we played Chelsea, that ball
Mm,
from Phillips to Bamford, like
yeah.
I can't see Rice making that. I just can't see him seeing that pass and making that. Like the assists, the difference in assists between Phillips and Rice are more as well. Like Phillips in the Championship was like the key player, like top, like probably one of our top three players. I think this season he hasn't been like like a top three, like in terms of the squad, but then he's been out as well, and it's the first season in the Premier League. But if we were to compare him and Rice, I personally would say that Phillips is a much better, more complete centre defence mid than Rice. And so, like when I'm hearing West Ham fans like mouthing off Phillips is this, Phillips is that, Phillips is not worthy enough to be in the England squad. Like he was chosen for a reason, and I think
Mm,
a lot of people are starting to see, like we've discussed off air, that like you were saying, even in, like when we first started this podcast, how much like you rated Phillips. Like Phillips, the way he plays is very like different from a lot of other CDMs. It's
yeah.
Rice
Deep
plays a
deep line
bit
playmaker. Yeah.
deep line, yeah. I don't see Rice doing that, and I can't see Rice getting assists while defending and running back to make the tackles. Obviously we play under Bielsa. Bielsa's the guy that makes you run all over the pitch. And Phillips runs left, right, centre. So I personally would say that Phillips is a more complete centre defence mid than
I
Rice.
think I think yeah. So I think somebody to challenge that because obviously I'm not discrediting Phillips is
Yeah,
like crap because he's sick. Like I've said, oh, he's like if I had to choose one Leeds player, he would be the player I choose. Like
yeah,
in terms of the one I prefer or like the most. But I think with Declan Rice, I think it's more the fact that what he's been playing for about in the Premier League. I don't know if it's right, about 4 years. I'm guessing about
yeah,
4 years now,
Yeah, four
4 or 5
seasons.
years. Yeah, and I think the fact that he started off as a centre back, and the fact that he's transitioned now into midfielder
yeah.
as well. I think that's what gives him. I think that's why it gives him the edge over Calvin Phillips in the sense because of that versatility.
Yeah, I think the thing with Phillips is though, like we've seen when Llorente was out, when we had no defenders, like we went through a Liverpool phase of no defenders. We were playing Phillips at centre back, and he was actually doing better at centre back than he was at CDM. So he can adapt, and this is like before he's even like obviously you said there the evidence is that Rice has played 4 seasons already in the Premier League. Phillips hadn't at the time. He'd played like a couple of minutes. We're newly promoted side sitting 10th, and the games we're losing is like if you look at the stats of Villa without Grealish and you look at Leeds without Phillips, it's practically the same thing in the sense that we're losing games without Phillips. Like if Phillips is back for the West Ham game, we have hope. If Phillips is back for the Chelsea game after that, we have hope. Without him, it makes a big difference. I'm not discrediting our squad because our squad is elite, I must say. I think it's pretty sick, but he's an integral player in that sense. And even when he played for England, like the difference he's made between whoever was there before or whenever you play Rice is a massive difference. So that's why I put him over Rice personally.
Yeah. Anyone have any points on that?
In a team like Leeds, I would say that Phillips is the right player. But if you look, if you're trying to put both of these players into a title-winning side, I think that Rice would go into that because there are points in a season where you need to basically defend a lot more, grind out results, which I think that Phillips can't do. What we've seen with Leeds is they either win games or they lose games. They can't draw a game.
But that's obviously the fault of our backline, of our defenders, and the fact that it's obviously like, as we're saying, I know I don't want to like obviously put the spotlight on it, but the fact that West Ham have been there 4 seasons. I mean, he's been at West Ham. Well, you're saying 4 seasons technically, and West Ham are now sitting 5th. West Ham have been sitting bottom of the table for forever. Like, if you look at the difference, we're sitting 10th. Look at the other promoted sides where they are.
We're not bottom of the table, but like in amongst that range. Yeah.
Well, we're sitting 10th first season in, and people are already eyeing up Phillips for the England CDM role. Like,
but then we saw that with Sheffield also. They finished quite high last season. So teams coming up from the Championship have done well. I'm not saying that Phillips is a bad player, but then if you want to put a player in a title-winning side, that would be Rice for me personally, because I think that he could do a CDM role all by himself.
Yeah,
I think that Phillips needs somebody beside him.
That's the same with me. Like at this moment, I take Rice just because of that experience and the fact that he's so versatile. And I think obviously he was at Chelsea for the academy as well, so he knows the club as well. But if I was to choose a number 2 for
be Phillips.
Be Phillips basically. Yeah. Just because I think I rate him a lot. I've followed him quite a lot of leagues, but obviously he's got to do that in the Premier League consistently, like Declan Rice has, because like he's been so underrated for West Ham, I think. So yeah, I agree with Connor in the sense that I take Rice at this moment.
Yeah, but, I mean, I might even be biased in the sense that I've seen more of him play. Like I've seen him from like he's been playing since the academy days, like I said, because I've seen him play, and the way he's played in the Championship, I think a big thing with Phillips is that you could argue is the fact that Bielsa came into the team, because when Bielsa came, Phillips changed completely. Like that's why like Bielsa had a strong bond with Phillips. So you could argue that maybe Phillips is dependent on Bielsa and Bielsa's tactics and the way that Bielsa shaped him, whereas Rice may not be. Like Rice may not be with whoever their manager is. What's his name?
David Moyes.
David Moyes. That's it. Yeah. Like I think maybe.
I think Phillips has a lot harder job to do. Like being a central defensive midfielder for Leeds is a lot harder than being a central defensive midfielder for what David Moyes does.
That's my point.
And if you put him in a good team, you're going to see a different Kalvin Phillips because he's going to have a different role to what he does at Leeds. At Leeds, like they're so like back and forth that the CDM role is probably the hardest out of all of them because he has to go back, he has to clean up, he has to also bring it forward as fast as he possibly can. So if he goes to a top team, maybe he'll have less of that like defensive role and more of the controlling to do, and then maybe we can kind of compare him to what he does against Rice here.
The only thing I'd say is direct comparisons. I can't say I've watched Kalvin Phillips loads. I've probably seen Rice more. I'm completely neutral in this discussion as well. The only time I've really seen Kalvin Phillips properly is for England, and I thought he did look a tad out of place there, but that's perhaps maybe because he's come through the roots. I don't know how old he is. Maybe that will come with age, but I feel like it's been said already. I think if it's a 2, maybe Phillips, but I think Rice does that job in terms of like international football. When I was watching him, because he played a few internationals at the start of this season. He looked a tidy player, very tidy player, but I don't know, for the England team, I don't know if he had that extra bit of special ingredient that you need to be a top class international central defensive midfielder. Not saying that Rice does, but I don't know. Maybe it's just a case that he's very good in a Leeds team. So I don't know if you think he will move at some point, or if he's happy at Leeds and he's performing well at Leeds, I'd just stay there. So.
I mean, I hope he does. To be fair, because last season, if when we obviously bottled it to Frank Lampard's derby, to put it in Darmish's favour, before he bottled the Chelsea job. No, he had an offer from Villa in it, so he was very close to leaving. But obviously, because he's born here, Leeds fan, obviously he stayed at the club. But I don't know if he goes, then it's going to be. Abhinav said he's got like such a massive role at the club. Like if he leaves, then it opens a big hole in the team, and we've seen that with the results we've made. Whether we get better next season or whether we end up like Sheffield United, we're going to rely on Phillips a lot. And if he goes to another side, whether it's in the Premier League or another team, completely in another country, then it'll be hard for us to sort of fill that role. And yeah, he is young. I think England-wise, I think he does need. If you give him more game time and select him more, he'll get better with age. So we'll just have to see. But yeah, personally, I would back on just down the debate. I would say Phillips. Or what I've seen of Phillips, obviously down the years, and how quickly he's progressed. Whether it's with Bielsa or without, I'd put him over Rice personally for me.